Okay, YouTubers, space detectives, paranormal police, pareidolia police, and quasi-scientific people that deny life on any other planet than Earth, you're all welcome. Today, I'm doing a bit of a general kind of overview of what or who owns Mars and whether it's legal to extract gold, artifacts, and minerals from Mars and bring them back to Earth, and the legal issues that may be incurred if one was to do that. Now, I've got a whole bunch of articles here. I'm not going to read out all the text on these articles. I'm just going to gloss over some of these things, and links will be below to all these things as usual in the description below. This is the first one. Now, who owns Mars? The law in outer space. Now, there was a treaty that was written, I think it was in 1957. It says here 1957, right. As the space race took off, nations gathered at the UN to negotiate international rules to govern activities in space. The Space Law Aid was born when more than half the nations of the Third Rock, including all the members of the ever-expanding but still rarefied clubhouse of launching powers, signed on to a set of legal do's and don'ts enshrined in an illustrious document dubbed the Magna Carta, or Constitution of Space, the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. Obviously, this was done before the moon landing in '69. The treaty made space a global commons, a place where everybody was free to go. It established that the exploration and use of outer space shall be carried on for the benefit and in the interests of all mankind, and space and celestial bodies are free for exploration and use by all nations. Okay, sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Now, there is a bit of a problem with this. Now, I'm going to get into this a bit more in a minute. I'm going to flick through some of these things. There's also this article here on the Planetary Society website here. Here's where China is looking to land its 2020 Mars rover. And there's a map here saying where they're going to land it, either Site 1 or Site 2. I'm not sure if they've actually decided yet. I haven't read through this whole article. But incidentally, it's going to be sort of in between some of the other Mars landers that have landed over the last 20 or 30, well, more than 20 years. Back since the 1970s, we've been sending things to Mars, and not all of them succeeded, but many of them have. And they're either going to pick Site 1 or Site 2 here. And incidentally, these are in the area near where the proposed nuclear explosions happen on Mars. I think one happened over this area and one over here. According to Dr. John Brandenburg, of course. Now, I'm not going to go into that. The atmosphere of Mars is really inconvenient. It's too thick to ignore, so aerothermal heating is important, but too rarefied to offer any easy descent by parachute. So the lower the elevation, the more atmosphere the spacecraft encounters on its way to the surface, and therefore it can decelerate more easily. In other words, landing on Mars is better if you land in a low-lying crater or low-lying area, a bit like Gale Crater, for instance, which is actually 4.5 kilometers below what would have been sea level, or the surface at least. Okay, so you've got thicker air, so it's easier to decelerate as you send your mission down to the surface. So there was that article there, that was interesting. Now there's another one here. We also have this company that's promised a one-way ticket to Mars, has gone bankrupt. I've read articles about this a while back, and Mars One Ventures, the company that claimed it was going to send hundreds of people to live and ultimately die on the red planet, is now bankrupt. So that's an unsurprising development, it says here. Okay, that's not really related to what I'm trying to get across today, but I thought I'd throw that in there anyway. Popular Science, we have this article. Do Earth laws apply to Mars colonists? This was interesting. There's nothing in the space treaties that would stop Musk and his followers from going to Mars, says Franz von der Dunk, who studies space law at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Private companies are perfectly free to set out for Mars, build permanent habitats and start a new society there, just as long as that society follows the rules of the Outer Space Treaty. For example, colonists cannot deploy weapons of mass destruction, sorry Elon, and they can't claim to own the land they're on, but there are a few sort of caveats to that when it comes to actually extracting minerals and artifacts, perhaps. I mean, there's no mention of artifacts, of course, because none of these people would admit there are valuable artifacts on the surface of Mars to bring back. But of course, I've begged to differ on that. As I have shown in many videos, not only are there large gold deposits on the surface, right on the surface, to see, like we have here. This is a video I did a couple of years ago, 2017, Mars Golden Mansion. Now, this is a massive gold deposit that's in the shape of a huge building. Now, it may not be a building, but it certainly looks like gold. And this is a high-rise image from the MRO. And this is huge. Now, this is about the size. The house I'm in at the moment is quite small. It's a terraced house in Bristol in the UK. And they're about 25 foot wide or 30 foot wide or something like that. And about, well, it's 2 stories, and there's a little garden and stuff. It's not a very big house. Now, this thing is way, way bigger than that, and it shows rectangular symmetry. Now, even if it's not a building, and it's a lump of gold, we've got a negative here showing some of these structures around it. There's lots of straight structures around it as well. Very interesting. Now, if this is gold, or largely gold, this is about 5 times or 10 times, somewhere between 5 and 10 times the size of my house, right? Now, that's a lot of gold. And I couldn't begin to tell you how much that would be worth, but it would be billions. Billions and billions. A lot, okay? It's a very, very large deposit. This is something like 500, let me think, about 100 or 150 feet across or something like that. There is details in the description below. I can't remember exactly. This was a while ago I did this. But this is very large. Now, if that's solid gold, which it may well turn out to be, that's going to be worth billions on its own. But of course, wouldn't it be cheaper to extract gold from asteroids? Now, asteroids, of course, are moving. That's one problem. But nobody really owns them. And if you actually landed on an asteroid or managed to capture one and bring it back, that would be easier than extracting all this gold and then flying it all back all the way from Mars to Earth. So there is that issue. So a lot of companies are now, mining companies are now thinking quite seriously about mining gold and minerals and even water, bringing water back from comets and stuff like that to Earth, which is very interesting. Asteroid Water for sale. There's this other one here. This goes on. Who owns Mars? Mining puts spotlight on out of this world property claims. I've got this here. Okay. A firm backed by Google founder Larry Page and Virgin Group's Richard Branson expects to be mining asteroids for water in the next 10 to 15 years. The company will launch its first robotic probe mission to scout asteroids for resource deposits in 2020. Said Planetary Resources Chief Executive Chris Luecki. Okay, so now if they're actually saying this in public, there are probably many other companies that are privately thinking and planning similar expeditions to extract minerals and various other things from asteroids as well as other planets. And one thing I wanted to try and work out, because I've reposted this video on my new channel. This is a video I did back in 2017. This is part 2. Part 1 was a year earlier, or at least the year earlier. And so this was originally found in 2016 and posted on my main channel, ArtAlienTV, but I've recently posted this again on my new channel, Space Detective 1, so check that out if you want to watch the full version of it on there. But this is a half uncovered statue on the Mars ridgeline. Now, it's not very clear. The image is not great quality, but it's there. And not only is it there, I managed to confirm it in a second image taken later from another angle. And I'll show you it here. I'll fast forward it. Here's the second image from Sol 1438. Now, if I go forward, you can actually see the same thing, but from a slight side angle here. We've got a buried statue in the sand, and it's gold, okay? And when you enhance it, it's very, very gold looking and reflective. Highly likely to be gold or some similar precious metal. There we have it. There is a comparative image here. There we are. So there we have the original angle when I spotted it the year before, and then I came back and found another angle of the same thing, and you can actually see that this thing has a big headdress, a kind of Egyptian style headdress coming right up here. This is gold, and if you look at the reflections on it, this is gold, or something very similar to gold, I would say. Okay, so that beggars the question. We have what look like massive deposits of gold on the surface, like this. We have this statue, which is buried in the sand. Now, this is only the head of the statue, and is about 4 or 5 inches across, not huge. But the lengthwise, that's probably about 10 or 12 inches, that's about a foot long. And this is probably just the very tip of the iceberg, literally. And there may be a whole golden statue buried in the sand below it. So if we have things like this on Mars, and I've shown many, many things like this on Mars, now about 100 statues and artifacts similar to this. Many of them are specimens and not artifacts. But what we have is art. Now, how much would something like this be worth if you were going to go there, dig it up and bring it back to Earth? What could we possibly compare it to in value? Not the value of the gold, but the value of the artifact, because art is worth way more than gold. And in fact, if it's of historical importance, like this may turn out to be, it has much greater value. In fact, you could probably factor it to a factor of 10 times its weight in gold, or perhaps even 100 times its weight in gold. And also bear in mind the cost it would take to bring it back to Earth. That also has to be taken into account. So what I did, I looked up Tutankhamun's burial kind of mask, whatever it's called, King Tut. Now this thing, Tutankhamun's mask, weighs about 11 kilograms in total, and the scrap gold value is something like £372,000. Okay, but of course it's worth way more than its scrap gold value. Now this isn't solid gold, a lot of this is plated, and in fact when this was made back thousands of years ago, they used electrolysis to electroplate some of this gold. It's not all pure gold, a lot of it is, but this is hollow, and it's been plated. In other words, they were using electrical current, passing it through a bath and then dipping the thing into the gold, and it was sticking to the mass to form this beautiful gold finish with lapis and other valuable stonework and stuff as well inlaid into it, and enamel and stuff like that. So this is an extremely valuable piece of art, which is worth way more than its weight. And it says here, recently the Museum of Northampton sold a statue of Sethemka for £16 million to a private collector. If we assume that Tutankhamun's death mask is at least 1,000 times more important, which it probably is, you could expect it to command a price of £16 billion. Okay, less 10% auction fee. Not too shabby, yeah, okay. But that says to me that some of these things on Mars that I've been finding, and other people have found a few as well, may be worth billions and billions of pounds or dollars. They may be worth so much money, in fact, that it would be almost impossible to put a price on them. Now, would they be worth as much as something like King Tut's mask here, when we don't actually know the history of these things? Would they become more valuable once we learned about the history of Mars and who lived there and how long and what happened on Mars, and worked out whether these were statues of kings or princes or queens? We also have slightly less glamorous looking objects like this carved cat here. Now this was something I found a couple of years ago. I think no, actually about a year ago, just over a year ago, 2018. Now this is a carving of a cat. And there's the enhancement. I'll freeze it there. You've got the raw image at the top there, and I've overlaid the enhanced image on top and put that next to it. Now it doesn't look like a lion, but it looks like some sort of cat. It's a lot more slim. The nose is much more sort of knobbly. It's got all these kind of weird kind of nodules on it. It seems to have a kind of whisker sticking out there. Now, it's got some good eye detail around the eye and a big ear, but unfortunately, it's right at the top of the image, and we missed the very top of the ear. There would probably be another ear showing next to that, but it's gone off the edge of the page, unfortunately. But basically, it's a cat. And now, I've found many other carved animals. This isn't gold, of course, but below this thing may be a burial chamber. There may be many burial chambers on Mars, as I have suggested in the past in many videos. Now, the ridgeline where this gold mask was buried is quite steep, and there's loads and loads of sand and sort of rubble that's fallen off here, and you've got rubble that's fallen down onto the sand here. Now, this is deep sand, and there's many of these ridgelines on Mars. In fact, there's hundreds of them in Gale Crater, and many of them have statues at the bottom. Some of them have them halfway up and are partially buried like this one. This is one of many. In fact, there's probably about 100 now on my channel. Some of them are completely out in the open. Some are carved into the rock faces, and some are gold like this, and they're just lying there partially exposed by the erosion of the sand as it's been blown away by the wind. Now, you've also got water that melts from frost on these rocks that then washes down into the sand. You can actually see the wet sand either side of it. This happens every day in the summer, and basically washes the sand away. So if me or you were to go there, it wouldn't take more than a few minutes to actually uncover this with your bare hands. You'd actually be able to sift some of this sand away and push it out of the way, and you would possibly find a whole treasure trove of such gold items and statuettes and figurines, as I have shown in many videos before. So basically, there could be countless more of these in Gale Crater, and as I have said many times before, it's much like Valley of the Kings. There are multiple burial chambers and burial dolmens all in a row in these ridgelines and mounds. A lot of them are burial mounds, and we found many statuettes as well as skulls and other things, hundreds of them so far. So there's no doubt about that in my mind. In fact, all you have to do is go through my videos and look at the playlists I've got and flick through, and you will see countless examples, a lot of them way clearer than this. But often there are things like this which are not gold, which wouldn't be worth so much. Now, how much would something like this be worth if you were to pick it up and bring it back to Earth? Not a great deal. But to an artist like myself, or to an historian or a museum curator, this would also be priceless, because it's an example of Martian art, and a good example. And it's not the best example I've got. There are many on my channel, as many of you may have seen in the Mars statue playlist and stuff like that. So what I'm trying to work out is how long it is before some of these companies realise that there are loads and loads of priceless artefacts half buried in sand in Gale Crater, and how long is it before they go there and steal them and then sell them on the black market? Because once they realise there's not just resources there, but there is high art buried in the sand, potentially billions and billions of dollars worth of priceless art buried in the sand. Once they realise that, there's going to be a gold rush of people like Elon Musk is already going to Mars, of course, although he's had a few problems, but he's still going to be going there. Is he an art thief? Has he got his eye on some of these artefacts? Has he been following some of my videos and other people's videos about what's been found on Mars? Is that possible? Are people like Richard Branson and other rich entrepreneurs out there going to be going to Mars and stealing these artefacts that belong to everybody, that should be in a museum? This is the question we have to ask. Are thieves going to go to Mars and steal the art? We know that mining companies are already looking at going to Mars to take minerals, such as gold and platinum and other things. We know that companies are looking to mine the moon and extract helium-3 from the moon. and other things like titanium and other rare minerals. So this is the question we have to ask. Is Mars going to be robbed, and will the space treaty that was signed back in 1967 be adhered to by these companies? This is the question we've got to ask. So I'm going to leave you to read all these articles here. Some of them are sort of more related than others. I just sort of picked them at random. I sort of typed in a search. In fact, all I typed in was "who owns Mars planet," and it came up with a load of interesting articles that have been written over the last few months and years. So there we are. So I'm probably going to leave it there now. This has been long enough already. My voice is starting to go here. It's very hot here, and I can't have my main fan on in the room because it will screw up the recording. So is this a building? Maybe, maybe not. But is this gold? This thing isn't gold, but it may also be very valuable. Some of these statues, from an artistic and historical point of view, may tell us a great deal about the previous civilizations on Mars and how advanced they were in mathematics and art and writing and other things, civilized things. So they are very important in that respect. But of course, thieves wouldn't see it that way. They would probably see this as of lesser value, but it would still have considerable value. Millions of dollars this would be worth, even though it's carved in stone, purely for its historical significance. As I've shown in this video here, this is called Gods on Mars Part 2. There's Gods on Mars Part 1, 2, 3 and 4. I think 5 coming up very soon. There are what looks very much like Egyptian style statuettes and things on the surface of Mars. Many have been found. I've found dozens of them. And there are things like this sarcophagi here, which is about 4 or 5 feet long. It's not huge. So there are obviously many burials on these ridgelines, and they often have statues along the base of each ridgeline, and there are things buried underneath these ridgelines and mounds, and I'm sure they're absolutely jam-packed with goodies, such as you might find in somewhere like ancient Egypt. There we have it, stood up. I flipped it round there, and it's not dissimilar to something like this, you know. So there are loads of these things, and some of these little statues, they may not be gold, but that doesn't mean they're not priceless. I mean, some of them look like Olmec heads, like this one. Let's go forward a bit. There we are. Some of them are massive sphinxes, giant sphinxes like this. Now, as a tourist attraction, this would be incredible. I mean, obviously you would dig this up and bring it back to Earth, but imagine the tourist trade that you could send to somewhere like Gale Crater to go round and tour around these artefacts. It would be like a massive open museum. You could send people there on a holiday, for maybe for a month or something, or maybe they could go to live there or whatever, and they could come here to do a tour and look at the priceless statues and artifacts and ruins that are all over Gale Crater. These things are all over the place. This is one of my favourites. I always come back to this because it's so large. This is well over 200 feet long, about 225 or 250 feet long. Incidentally, about the same size as the giant Sphinx at Cairo in Egypt. But it looks very different. Perhaps this is more like what our Sphinx looked like on Earth before it was recarved. It's been recarved at least once, possibly 2 times. So there we have it. So you can check out all these links below, as usual. Thanks for watching, everybody. Do check out my new channel, Space Detective 1, and please give the thumbs up and share this on social media. And if you feel like you need or would like to make a small donation, however small, there are details of my PayPal address in the description also. So thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.